All right, we're live. Here we are. Yeah, there we go. We're live. All right. Like I said, I was over at my other in the book channel. I wanted to drop in while I had a few minutes to answer a few questions, and nobody was there. So I said, well, it's probably everybody's probably over here in my Ibmore channel, so I'm gonna come back over here. But from here on out, if I'm gonna do a hangout, a question and answer session or a hangout, that's gonna be over there, and I'll try to announce it like at least an hour or two ahead of time to give people a heads up before I get over there. So this is kind of impromptu, which works over here in the Ibmore channel because I have more subs and people know to look for me here. But from here on out, now it's going to just be for the people that are subbed over there, the people that have already read the material, because it'll be uh, it'll be like a question and answer, almost like a class where people have already read the material, and we can kind of go over it. But just for people that in general that aren't hip to it, Tragedy Hope is one of the most famous. I said that the top one of the top five conspiracy books, even though it's not a conspiracy book, but probably one of the top five history United States history books ever written. It is absolutely amazing. That's how come the Council of Foreign Relations spent 20 years trying to, well, almost 30 years trying to kill that book, because the book was actually written in the 1960s. I think he published it in 1963, if I'm not mistaken. And they tried for 30 years to kill that book. Even he died trying to get his publishing rights back from the Council of Foreign Relations, back from the publisher, and they actually destroyed the plates, the original plates, because you got, back then you had plates that books were actually printed from, and they actually did, they had, normally they have so many plates that they have to run so many books, and they only printed like five. I think they printed like 5,000 books, if I'm not mistaken. And the only reason that the book was released is that people that conspiracy theorists, right wing conspiracy theorists, basically stole them from libraries and had them photocopied and had plates made from the photocopies, and they reissued the book in I think it was in the 70s. They reissued the book, and he was pissed because he wasn't getting paid for it. This was his magnum opus. This was the greatest book that he had ever written, and he didn't care so much about the money, but he cared about the recognition and the fame, because this is what he was promised, and he never got it because the book was never supposed to see the light of day. But it did get out, and when they couldn't destroy the book, they made it a conspiracy book. And when they made it, and quickly helped him by making a conspiracy book, because later on he started naming names, and instead of them fighting, they just let people go with it, because as long as people were looking for a conspiracy, they weren't looking for the actual blueprint of what the book was actually written for. And picking it up, if you read it, you can read it as a conspiracy book. You really can, because he does kind of lift the skirt of he kind of pulls the curtain back from the wizard, and he does name names, but he names names not to reveal anything. He named names so that people could understand the structure, that who built what, and why they built it, and who they were connected to, and what is the reason that these people actually built the doggone thing, as in accordance to the culture and in accordance to the way the civilization was actually constructed. And basically, quickly, I'd say the names are basically unimportant. Now, you could look up the names as to get a better background, and understanding about why people and that particular group of people did certain things. Like if you like Quigley, if you once you read Quigley, he talks about the Russians, you understand what happened and why there was the Soviet Union and why the Soviet Union, even though it is a communist country, it's still an authoritarian country. Okay, and there's still Russian people, and they respond the same way. Russian people, they just put on a new face on their government, but underneath their culture is still the same. Same thing with the Chinese. That's how come the Chinese communists and the Russian communists didn't really all get along all that well, because they had a completely different civilization, a completely different culture. So when they added communism, the Chinese say it all the time. Um, Communism is the government that we run. Us being Chinese and our culture is who we are. So we're just running communism with Chinese principles. So you ask, how come the Chinese can do capitalism and do it so well? Because they're doing capitalism with Chinese principles. The form of government doesn't matter. The culture matters more than the government. So you say that, so a democracy in the United States and a democracy in the UK are slightly different, which is completely different than a democracy in Germany and absolutely different than a democracy in Japan. The form of government doesn't matter. The culture that it's that they're running matters. It's like, for instance, if you have, say, if you have you have a General Motors car, and you have a Cadillac, and you have a, I would name your other kind of car with a big block engine. Okay, the culture of the car is in the engine and the drivetrain. How it's going to run, what the engine's going to sound like, blah blah blah. But the thing is, on top of that Cadillac, is all the other features. But at the base, you could take the chassis off of the Cadillac chassis off, and put another GM uh, uh, body on it. It- It's going to run slightly. It's going to be slightly different because you changed the body, but underneath it's going to basically be the same thing. Because all you did was change the body. When you change when you change the form of government, you change slightly the face of how things are run, but basically underneath, the engine underneath is the same. So that's where people fall down at. Okay, culture means, your government is built on culture. Your culture is not built on the government. We should know that, with the difference between, say, the dominant culture, which is white, the United States, and the subculture, which is black. Even though we're in a democracy, we got same laws, got the same, we have the same products and whatnot. We're slightly different because our culture is slightly different. So the effects are going to be different when you apply something to it. Okay, it's like, when you apply welfare in the white community is different than it is in the black community. You're going to have different effects because the culture is different enough to where you're going to have opposite effects. Uh, I'll keep this up. If nobody's interested, nobody joins, I'm gonna basically finish this up. Um, like I said, this tragedy and hope is a master class. This is a master class. Um, in this book, this is a master class in geopolitics. I can tell you that. There's, this is which is the reason that my circle encouraged me to actually the do a web series on it. because because it is a master class. And if you understand this, you understand quickly, you understand tragedy, hope, you get a eye-opening experience of how the world actually works. You will, if you understand the book, you will understand how the world works, because the whole world is Western civilization now. If you understand this book, you understand quickly, you understand civilization and rotation, you automatically understand how come you had to have a Gulf War. You have this stuff going on in Syria. You have the stuff that went on in Iraq and Afghanistan. You understand what the clash actually was, and you understand, just like 9/11. 9/11. The reason for 9/11 was 6 years earlier. The reason for 9/11 was 6 years. Well, actually, the reason for 9/11 goes all the way back to the Vietnam War, which is suppression of China. And once China was let in, the reason for 9/11 was two things: one, the fall of the Soviet Union, and two, the 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 resurrection of Russia with Chinese money. And once you understand those, if you understand quickly, those two things equals 9/11 and the Gulf War and the suppression of China again. According to Quigley, because Quigley did predict that the Asian pressure or the rise of Asia would happen in the year 2000. He really did. He predicted that. He predicted that in 1963, 1962, according to his calculations. And according to demographics, according to the flow of technology, he said that you're going to get Asian pressure in the year 2000, which is why he did not want China to be included in Western civilization. If you wanted the United States to be what it was and be the power that it was, including China into Western civilization as a favorite nation, was the absolute worst thing he could do. And that's why he said in his speech that he wrote Tragedy and Hope to preserve white Western civilization. And once they made that mistake against his opposition, he said it's finished. In other words, there's nothing you can do about it now, because you set off the formula. You set off things in motion that you cannot control. And that's the whole thing about human beings. They think that they can control history. They think that they can control the flow of the natural order of things, which is always a folly, because you think just because things have always been that way, that they're always going to be that way, because human beings have such a short lifespan. If you had creatures that could live 10,000 years, then it would be a natural evolution. Just like we live long enough to know that spring, summer, and fall all follow each other in a cycle. Okay, because we live long enough. If we only lived a year, then it would be a mystery to us. Okay, we'd be born in the winter, and it'd be unusual. We think it was weird that all of a sudden it would get increasingly warmer and warmer, because we're born in the wintertime and we only live a year. So, we when we're born, we think it's always going to be cold. Then when it starts to get warm, we think it's unusual. When it gets hot, we think that the world, things are going to come to the end until it starts to get cool again. And then by the time winter comes back around again and we're almost dead, then we figure out, oh, this is just a cycle. But unfortunately, we don't live in there. We don't live long enough. We don't live 20,000 years to see this cycle rotate every 500 or 600 years. We don't understand that there's a cycle. And if we understand that there's a cycle, then we understand that we're no more in control of that cycle than we are the weather. And once you understand what the cycle is and how civilizations rise and fall and the different cycles that go along with it, then you understand the world. You understand that, okay, if there's a time and place, which the ancients always did. The Gnostic, the Egyptian priests understood that there was a cycle, because they wrote all this stuff down. They understood that there was a time and place for everything. So that's what their job was, which is something that we've killed. We've actually killed that kind of wisdom. I think I put did I put the link up? I put the link. Yeah, I put the link in. If somebody wants to jump in, because I only got maybe 15 more minutes because I got something else I'm gonna have to do. I'm gonna have to close this out. So if anybody wants to jump in real quick, they're gonna have to jump in real quick because I won't be on very long. But to continue what I was talking about, um, Quigley looked at Quigley looked at a civilization because that's his first book, the evolution of civilizations. He talked about a pattern, a cycle of patterns within in civilizations. That's how come he in his book he looked at five civilizations, the five civilizations that had writing, and he looked at the similarities between them because human beings are human beings, and human beings have cycles, and whether we like it or not, we're more alike than we are different. And he just noticed that there was a distinct similarity between civilizations. He wrote about five. He actually studied about 20 some odd civilizations. And he noticed that there was a distinct pattern, a distinct uh, uh, steps or cycles in each particular civilization. And he broke them down into a formula. So what he was asked to do was apply that formula to the current one that we have. So that the managers, what I call the managers, or we call our rulers, or we call our leaders, could actually glean something from it. Okay, where are we in this particular cycle? What's going to happen, and how do we predict? How can we predict what's going to happen? And if so, how do we prevent certain certain cycles from happening? Okay, he has a term about diffusion or cultural diffusion or cultural diffusion where the essence of a just like any other organism, um, or any other uh, organism or liquid. If you drop oil into drop a pool of a drop of oil into water, it's going to diffuse out. Same thing with the civilization. Wherever that cultural civilization, especially if it's dominant, starts in its core, it's going to diffuse out to the rest of the borders of its civilization, which you call it the periphery. And for whatever conditions they're going to adopt, whatever that the cultural instruments that the core of that civilization has, they're going to adopt it. And chances are that it's going to grow just like in fertile ground. It's going to grow and probably grow stronger. So stuff that newer things that couldn't get started in the older parts of the civilization will grow in the new civilization, which like he says, the growing part will always assume the older part or the stagnant part. And that's the problem with civilizational rotation or cultural diffusion. It's it's technical, but if you understand it, if you understand quickly, then you understand what's going on with uh, with Europe. That's why the demographic winter, a demographic cliff that they're talking about is so troublesome to them. Okay, they actually know what's getting ready to go on. If you understand that, then you understand Brexit. According to um, what's going on with the EU and the British themselves, because the British have their own particular culture. And if you look at their culture and who they are, then Brexit is not a mystery. Even now, um, even though it may be them exiting the EU may be a technical mistake, but according to their culture, they did what Brits always do. Even Brits don't understand. Even Brits don't understand why they did it. They just did it. You know, it's they don't understand their cultural heritage. Um, to them, it's of course it's right, okay, because we're British and we did it on principle, and you hear that a lot. and that's the British. British are not necessarily pragmatic people. You know, Germans are pragmatic people, and Germans are scratching their heads like, "What did you just do?" They don't understand them because Germans are very pragmatic. They're authoritarian and they're pragmatic. They're not liberal and principle is one thing, but pragmatism rules in Germany. So why would you break up the EU or threaten the EU when it's the bloc that's basically holding all these countries together and everybody's succeeding because of it? So what you had to take in a few refugees, that's a minor point to the Germans. But the British is the principle of the thing. But that's why on this channel I talk about culture so much, because that is the missing element. Because civilizations are built on their culture first, and culture is the base groundwork of everything. Maslow hierarchy of needs is nothing but culture uh, uh, built into a structure where you understand the elements of culture. Culture is simply the the human biology trying to adapt to its environment, and the reaction is culture. So like you add human biology and you add the environment, the result will be culture. So biology plus environment equals culture. So anytime you change any one of those, the other half, the what we call the left side of the equation, like either environment or you change the biology, then the equal sign on the other side, the right hand, it has to change. So if you want to understand what culture is, what culture actually is, you examine culture, then you can go back and says, okay, what changed as far as these two terms in the equation? Okay, did we do something? Is there evolutionary change, which is very slow, or is there environmental change? And most likely, it's an environmental change. But now it's going to be a biological change, because now we can actually change our biology, or we will be able to change our biology. So now it's going to be even more complex than it was before. Before, you could just look at the environment. Okay, marriage is a cultural instrument. You say, okay, marriage is breaking down, right? Say, take marriage for instance. Marriage is breaking down. Okay, in your culture. So you have to look back. Okay, it's either our biology changed or our environment changed, according to Quigley's formula for culture. So you look back and said, okay, our biology hasn't changed in about 20,000 years. So men and women are basically the same as far as biology. So what changed? So you have to look at the environment. Okay, now the environment changed. Okay, what in the environment in the old days did marriage fit into? So you look at marriage as far back as you can, right? So you go all the way back, say 50,000 years or 60,000 years with the Jawa tribe, and you look at it and said, okay, why did they have marriage back then? And Jawa tribe says, okay, because she's going to have so many children, because you need to produce children, right? Like I always say, you need to produce children. Okay, before the tribe to survive, because you need workers, you need members of the tribe to help you survive, because human beings survive as a collective. So the more people, the bigger the tribe, the bigger the land mass, with the resources of the land mass, right? The more you can survive, growing food, finding food, hunting down animals. It's easier to hunt down animals in a large hunting group than it is one person. So you had to produce people. So you look at the fertility rate. Okay, women will, over her lifetime, will have 8 or 9 children. Half of them will survive. Okay, for her to have 8 or 9 children, she can't raise them by herself. She needs what? She needs a husband. So it's created for that. Okay, because you need these people. So for 50,000 years, marriage works just fine. All of a sudden, the last 150 years, 200 years, it just goes to shit, right? So you got to say, okay, what changed? Well, the people didn't change, right? People can't change in 150 years, 100 years, right? People can't change. So you go back and look and said, okay, when did marriage, okay, marriage is based on the fertility rate. When did the fertility rate go down? Okay, fertility rate went down, started going down. You look at the fertility rate, historical fertility rate, right? Which they keep charged for. And you go to see the fertility rate started going down in the early 19th century, 1820, 1830. So, okay, now what happened to make the fertility rate go down? And then you look and said, okay, well, this is the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Huh. Okay. What did the Industrial Revolution do to make the fertility rate go down? Oh, the Industrial Revolution brought in machines. What did machines replace? Replace people. Okay. If machines replace people, then you don't need as many people. So if you don't need as many people, then the woman doesn't need to have 8 or 9 children because her survival isn't dependent upon her having 8 or 9 children. Okay. Okay. So what is the reason for her having a husband? Because she had 8 or 9 children. If she's only going to have one, she don't need 8 or 9. She don't need a husband. Okay. So the need for the cultural instrument of marriage disappears. So we think it is a political act. We think it is a cultural act. We think it's a we think it is a non-rational decision, the dissolution of marriage. You think there's something wrong with human beings? No, there's nothing wrong with the human beings. There's something that the environment has changed, and their biology is just responding to what? It's responding to the environment, and it comes out in what? A cultural change. The pill is a farmer's wife. A farmer's wife that needs 8 or 9 children doesn't need birth control because she needs to produce as many children as she can. She don't need birth control. Who needs birth control? Women that live in an industrial revolution, in an urban industrial place, because now children are a liability. They're exact opposite. My grandmother was a sharecropper. She basically produced 10 children. One of them died, but she basically produced 10 children because guess what? She needed 10 children to survive. She would have died on her own if she didn't have 10 kids, even after her husband died. You know, they, you know, she, it didn't matter to her whether, uh, um, whether she had 4 kids within wedlock and she had the other 6 out. It didn't matter. They were all needed. And so they, because they were all had a role within the childhood. How many more minutes I got? Oop. Okay, time is getting away. I have another spot. Nobody's gonna jump in. I have another spot in about. Nobody's got a question. I got another spot in about uh 10 minutes. I gotta go because I got another thing that I gotta do. And so I see one person that's muted. If you got a question about tragedy and hope or something similar to it, you can jump in and ask. If not, I'm going to riff about another 5 minutes and then I got to go. But that's why, um, I started not to put Tragedy and Hope up as the first book because Tragedy and Hope is like 1,300 pages, and it is a dense and it's a difficult book. And without some kind of guidance, most people can't get through it. But since I had subs that requested it, we'll muddle through it. Okay. I understand the book because if you understand quickly, you understand Kissinger. If you understand quickly, you understand the Council of Foreign Relations. If you understand quickly, you understand you will understand um, the World Economic Forum because because basically all He's because basically he describes all the processes that are going on and the clashes between the two. They have been trying for the last 25 years to disprove Quigley's theory. And every time they try to do it, guess what? It pops up that he essentially is the master. He essentially is he is, as far as social science, he is the genius of social science, and probably the best mind in social science since Freud. And he's unknown because he's purposely unknown to most people. Freud is famous because Freud unlocked. Freud basically gave the secrets to the human mind. Which had been known by the upper class for a long time, because that's how they used it to control people. His nephew went to his uncle and found the secret so he could use it for advertising and get people to buy stuff, make money, which is something the ancients had known for a long time. Quigley is basically doing the same thing, which they didn't want. They did not want to get out because this is how they rule you. And so if you know what they know, then you know what their game plan is. They don't have another game plan. Okay. They do not have another game plan. So it's just like looking at, if you're in sports, it's just if you look at a football game, okay, on both sides, it looks like chaos. Okay, you become a fan of the game, you have an idea what's going on. But if you have the playbooks for both teams, and you sit down watching a football game and you study both playbooks, guess what? You know what they're getting ready to run before they run it by the formation. You could tell what the defense is on one side and what the offense is looking at on the other side, and you basically can tell before the snap of the ball what plays getting ready to get run, or what options of plays are getting ready to be run. So you already know who was supposed to be where and why that play succeeded or failed before the replay even came up, because somebody either made a mistake or somebody made a play. And this is what Quigley actually gives you. He gives you, once you understand it, you understand why particular countries do certain things. And you understand what the playbook is. You know what options that they have. They have options A, B, or C. And all you have to do is figure out which option that they chose. And then you know what direction they're trying to go in. So, and this is the way I have taught, or this is the way my circle works when we're doing analysis. We look at a problem, a particular circumstance that's coming up, and then this is even beforehand, like Libya. Okay, we knew that there was only so many options with Libya. They had A, B, or C, and whichever one was chosen, we knew what would happen. When they voted for the no-fly zone, we automatically knew what was going to happen. Okay, they have to go with option B or option A. They got option A instead of option B, and we knew that basically Gaddafi was done. Just like Syria, we knew that what happened to Libya, they weren't going to allow it to happen to Syria because of certain conditions. Well, we knew that. We knew it wasn't going to happen. So once you understand that and you follow the world like that, then you understand how the world works. I mean, literally how the world works. And once you understand how the world works, then you're going to understand how your world works on the ground. And like I said, it might not happen immediately. A lot of times what we used to predict, in our circle, we would give information out that wasn't going to be good for the next until, um, anywhere from 18 months to 5 years later. So we were giving our black folks, a heads up that what's going to happen Um, 18 months to 5 years later, like the African Union, what's going on in the African Union and East African corridor, we knew this was going to happen way back in 2005, like 11 years ago, because the options that were chosen. And and the only thing that could have derailed it was if certain circumstances came up, and they didn't. So what you have now in Africa, going on the African continent, is just something that we knew about 10 years ago. It's nothing new to us. It's just realizing itself. What's going on in Europe? Okay. We thought this was going to, we knew this was, actually, we knew this was going to happen 10 years ago. It's just a matter of how long the process was going to play out. It was going to take to play itself out. You know, in other words, just like a chess master, he knows how many moves that it's going to take to beat you, according to what's on the board. So he knows in checkmate in, he said checkmate in 20 or 25 moves. Okay. If you don't make any mistakes. If you make mistakes, then it's going to cut it down to less. And that's what's happened. They played the chessboard, and then the game was basically over. You're going to get checkmated in 30 moves or so, to 35 years or 30 moves, until you try to go off the rails and do something different. Now, if the person on the other side makes a mistake, well, then yeah, you can change the board because he's made a mistake. But if that person doesn't make a mistake and you make a non-standard moves, basically you're basically speeding up the game. You're gonna checkmate yourself in instead of 35 moves, you're gonna checkmate yourself in 15. You make another mistake, it's 10. And that's what the United States, basically Western Europe and United States has done. They haven't they were trying to force the board to make the South, the BRIC countries, make a mistake. They didn't. So what they have now is, they, instead of it's the checkmate in 35 moves, now it's checkmate in the they cut it down to 20, and now it's 10. So basically, um, they're in, Europe and the United States is in check. Okay, and they're moving around just like the king is moving around, trying to get in and out of check to prevent from being mated. But they know, and everybody else knows, that checkmate is inevitable at this point. It's something that I might have to talk about on my regular channel, but I'm not going to talk about it here. If you want that kind of talk, you're going to have to go to my subscribe to my BGS Books channel, because this kind of talk is not going to be talked about in this form, especially this form now, because it's gotten too popular, with this Kofi Anderson thing, which is one reason why I have it in more channels, to keep what's happening in that under that video from happening. Because, like I said, the Ibmore channel is not a debate about race. It's not a debate about race. The Ibmore channel is to discuss what the problems that are going on with black men. And I don't need, no disrespect to no disrespect to the Caucasian or European subs that come to the channel. As long as they're respectful, as long as it's respectful dialogue, without the racial inferences and stuff like that, I'm not going to boot the person from the comments from the channel. Okay, I encourage my Ibmore brothers not to say things that will break, because it's a public forum that's going to bring attention to the channel and bring other people in and give them a reason to come to the channel and actually debate with you about stuff that doesn't need to be debated about. So that's why I'm thinking about pulling that particular video, because it's bringing in things that I don't want in the channel, which is an ongoing debate about race. Because I know how black people feel, I know how European people feel, and those two things don't mix, and it takes the whole channel off message. I don't want it to be about that. If I wanted it to be about that, I could have done that in my MGTOW forums. It's not about debating Europeans. And that's how come the stuff I'm getting ready to talk about, as far as about far as what's going to go in the rest of the world and stuff like that, it's going to really be sensitive to European people. Okay, so like I said, for Why More Brothers, this kind of talk that I'm talking about right now will not be discussed on this particular channel anymore. It's going to be in my books channel. That's where we're going to go deep into geopolitics, and that's where the real meat is. Like I said, for the car, the Europeans that will follow me there. Um, Sometime that talk is going to get real strong. So if you're sensitive, you best stay away from that particular channel. Because you come at me in that particular channel, trust and believe. I've been doing geopolitics for 20 years, and 99% of you guys can't hang with that stuff. Okay, I'm gonna be real with you. You can't hang with that stuff because there's a lot of people that are in that stuff that make decision makers that actually um, follow what I do in the real world. I mean, really follow what I do because they know I had been approached by the when I did my Quigley stuff. I had a couple people from the DOD that were willing to contribute to my channel for me to continue the series, but I wasn't doing it for money. Where I could have encouraged to write a book on a treatise explaining tragedy and hope, but I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this particular book or this particular series for my people so they can understand and they can get a heads up because they don't have people to do that for them. It is my contribution to give back to my people to push my people ahead. I can't build $1 billion business. Okay. I can't hire 100,000 black people. I'm not a politician to run for president. I can't, that's not me. I can't, especially at my particular age, I can't do that stuff. But what I can do is look at the world, analyze it, and give answers so that the people that are in position to do that stuff, like the people in Africa that we have counseled, that are in a position to do things, can take the answers, the analysis that we give, and apply it and use it to look at the world a little differently. But at that, nobody's got a question. I got to run. Um, the next discussion hangout on this particular topic, this kind of stuff, will be in the BGS Books forum. Look for it there. I'll try to announce it ahead of time. I'm thinking that I might do it. I'm thinking I might try to do it tonight. It depends. It depends on how I feel. But if I do it tonight, I'll announce it like a couple hours ahead of time so that the subscribers, that are over there that have subscribed to the channel, they'll get a heads up, and then we can chop it up there. But other than that, you guys have a good day. I'm gonna close this out, and for my Tragedy and Hope followers, meet me over there. That's where the next hangout for this particular topic will be. I don't know when the next hangout for this channel will be because I've already done like 2 or 3, and um, when I do a hangout on this particular channel, it normally lasts for 8, 9, 10 hours, and that's taxing, on an old man to sit in the chair and talk for 10 hours. So it'll be a while for this channel, but I know I've dropped the first like say 20 segments in the BGS Books channel. So for those that are interested in geopolitics and interested in tragedy and hope and want to peep geopolitical game, that's where you're going to go. Get up to speed, and then we can chop it up and we can start breaking this stuff down. Because once we start breaking this stuff down, I can show you examples. Other things will make sense to you. So when saying tragedy and hope is just a jumping off point. It's just a jumping off point so you can understand other texts, such as what's his name? He wrote on China. Oh my goodness, I'm having a mental block right now. But there's a lot of books that are on economics and geopolitics and stuff like that. Once you read quickly, all that stuff will make sense. The foreign affairs will absolutely make sense to you. And it will be just right like reading a newspaper. Um, Congress will make sense to you. All this stuff will make sense to you if you know about you know a little bit about history and you know read quickly. Then Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders are no more than a cycle. Most people don't understand what's going on. Most people don't, we don't understand why come the upper class is worried about Donald Trump. I do. Most people don't. But like I said, that discussion will go on in BGS books, not here. Anyway, I'll see y'all later. Bye.